أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. Nowadays we are discussing the subject of TAQWA, and TAQWA is a very wide subject. Within that subject we are discussing mainly only three translated meanings, three translations. One is translation as consciousness, the other translation as piety, the third translation as fear. We are not discussing other types, other meanings. Even within that subject, even within this limitation, even within these limited selections, we have further confined ourselves mainly to the topic of the translated word consciousness. We have seen that consciousness comprises connectivity, intelligence, cognition, mainly these elements. Intelligence includes general intelligence, emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is basically the basis of social intelligence. And so far as cognition is concerned, it requires attention, intention, and intentional, not only intention, but intentional behavior, and which means experience. And last time we had reached the level where we were discussing different levels of consciousness. Now, coming back to the last lecture, we had said that there are degrees of consciousness. For example, primary consciousness, which simply refers to the basic awareness, to refer to the capacity for awareness of the environment in which one is present, but without ability to express and articulate, as Adam was there before upgradation, without ability to express and articulate. These expression and articulations were developed later, afterwards, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَصَوَيْتُهُ, I'm strengthening it, I'm perfecting it, I'm further evolving it, so that he can express and articulate. And he was Allama Adam Asma Kullaha, he was given the ilm. And then what he has experienced, Adam's first interaction with the Malaika, when he was asked to give the performance before the Malaika, and his experience, his interaction in his presence, the behavior of Iblis, and that generates and regenerates knowledge, which means that the basic primary level of consciousness, which is termed as basic awareness, although it is given to every living creature, it has the capacity that it doesn't have all these features which we discussed here, unless it is given the necessary knowledge, ilm, training, is given the necessary tools, features, so that he can perform in those environments as Adam alayhi salam was provided. Now we come to today's discussion after recapitulating the entire summary very, very briefly and the last discussion. Now there are the consciousness levels which are provided for the human being. These are not permanent. The level of consciousness undergoes change all the time. It's not one becomes muttaqi once and he thinks that he has attained connectivity or he has become conscious or he has gained the relationship at the highest level, at the transcendent level with God or with the divine, and he will always remain there without any further continuous effort to maintain that position. The universe is undergoing change every time, every moment. All the time, the world is undergoing change. Human being is undergoing change because there are a lot of variables taking place, interacting all the time. So in order to face that change and keep pace with the change, one has to be basically conscious that he has to maintain his level of consciousness. Otherwise, he will again drift back. The nations, the people, they drift away, they lag behind if they don't recognize this, if they don't realize this, that they have to maintain the level of consciousness, rather improve it, which they have got as an element of taqwa. Taqwa is a constant has a constant requirement of action, constant requirement of attention, constant requirement of intention, a constant requirement of working for it. Now we are recapitulating, in fact, because now we are discussing the part of the consciousness which is relevant to present discussion. Consciousness comprises, first of all, consciousness of oneself. Now, this consciousness of self has been granted to some animals also, but not to everyone to know beyond his oneself. For example, elephant. Among the animal in the entire animal world, elephant is some of few animals which has the consciousness of self. It can recognize itself in the mirror. But to know the external world is a separate feature, that one finds one's own place in the environment. I am on the planet, in the solar system, in the universe. So fixing one's position in the universe is its another aspect. So consciousness of self and consciousness of the environment. It is identified, consciousness, we had discussed it earlier in detail, that consciousness is identified as sentience. Sentience refers to feelings. That is the minimum consciousness. Every living thing, even plant, it has been provided a certain level. But the sentience which the human beings have been provided, it is the highest level. It is the highest level. It includes sapience, that is wisdom, which can make judgment of internal and external existence. This is a great gift of God, that in the process of evolution, when the human being had reached the level of sapience, as they say that the Adam was upgraded from sapiens as Homo sapiens, because Homo sapiens had the feature of sapience. They could make judgment. They had the wisdom, and they had the feelings. They had the sentience. They did not have that level of sentience which was now to be developed in Adam. So from the Homo sapiens, with the addition of sentience, with the further upgradation of sentience, where the emotional intelligence was added, And due to emotional intelligence, the social intelligence was developed, so that man became, Adam became, human being became conscious of the internal and external existence. That is why today we are able to discuss, the human beings are able to discuss things which only do not pertain to his nafs, but he discusses the things which pertain to his anfus also. Fi nufusakum and fi anfusakum. Fi nafsika, within your own person, within your own psychology, within your own psyche, we are able to think, and we have that level of consciousness. But it does not stop there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has added so many features that we are able to recognize now the external world. And Adam was given ilm. Allama Adam asma kullaha, everything around him, everything which he was to see, everything which he was to encounter, everything which he was to know. So he was given the consciousness and necessary features for that, so that he has now the internal and external feeling of knowing the existence all around. There's the consciousness is also defined at the lower level, at the simple level, at the primary level, as the simple consciousness. This is just bodily awareness. Many animals has bodily awareness. They don't think, they don't consider, they don't have the capacity to think about internal and external existence. It is through this capacity that one tries to understand the existence of God, that there is the other. I'm not all. He created me. He is the Lord of the universe. He is maintaining it. So man has been upgraded from simple consciousness to different levels of consciousness. And in that consciousness process, evolution of consciousness process, he was fitted with many other features like sentience, feelings, sapience, features to make judgment. Then there is another aspect of consciousness, that is self-consciousness. It is called the self-consciousness, awareness of self, that is being aware of one's own self. Being aware of one's own self has a deeper meaning when we define subjects like nafs, and difference between nafs and anfus, nufusakum and anfusakum. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was asked for making zikr, introspection within the nafs, so knowing one's own self does not mean only knowing oneself simply as bodily awareness. Here it means self-consciousness is a higher level from simple consciousness. And here it means knowing one's own self as a nafs, which has different meanings: psyche, person, personality, and the entire subject of psychology. And then there is another level of consciousness, that is cosmic consciousness. Scientists call it cosmic consciousness. We may ultimately call it consciousness of the universe, or consciousness of the Lord who is maintaining, who created the universe and who is maintaining the universe. So cosmic consciousness, it is the awareness of life, not just life, life and order of the universe. It is here that mostly we are feeling we are missing the part of the order. Universe has an order. sun and moon have their own place. They have to work in their own orbits. The entire planetary system, the solar system, is fitted into a galaxy, and that is in order. And the galaxy, the entire galaxy being in order, is further in order with the entire system of Samawat. So cosmic consciousness gives the idea of awareness of life and order of universe. And that level, at that level, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduced his universe and the way it is being maintained. He introduced the world view. Amantu billah wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawm al akhir. This higher level of consciousness. Be conscious of Allah. Be conscious of the cosmos which is being maintained by him with forces, with junud, with malaika, and the entire order in the universe, which the Lord is maintaining. Kullu yawmin huwa fi shan. So these higher levels of questions, these higher levels, this higher level of philosophy that developed when human being was fitted with these modules which are far higher than all other animals in the entire animal world. And these are among the human beings, even among the human beings, this level of thinking, this level of understanding is developed by the enlightened human beings. The human beings who have the enlightenment, who have the nur of the ilm. Allahu nuru samawat wal ard. In this ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains the prismatic proliferation of ilm as a nur. And he gives an example. He says that this is an example to understand that it is like a ray of light passing through the prism, and then which splits into many other rays, colors, and patterns. So this level of understanding comes only to the enlightened human being who has been woken up, who is aware, who is living, and who is in the environment that he has been taken from darkness to the environment of light. Awareness may be internal. As I said, that it is at this heightened, enhanced level of enlightenment that man thinks of these things. Otherwise, usually, as we have become, when we have stopped thinking and we are just like zombies, we are just being drifted away by the wind. We don't think, we don't consider these questions. But the enlightened people, ulul albab, they know, they understand, they think about it. But usually, when they think about these things, when they discuss these things, usually they meet a resistance. So awareness may be internal. This may be physical, just the visceral feeling, or external, maybe just the sensory perception, awareness of experience. For example, experience of touch. These are also parts of awareness. Internal awareness, external awareness. But we are here talking about the environment, the awareness which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided to the human being to even think about the transcendence, to consider the questions of a much higher level of existence, beyond one's nafs. one thing is very important to note, that sensing is distinguished from observing or perceiving. Here, today, what we Muslims are doing, we are sensing things. Malaika every day knew, every day saw the things, but they had only the experience of seeing them. But they could not make any observation, analyze it, understand it, and perceive what does it mean, what it is. Even if we cannot understand the whole thing, but human being has been given the capacity to perceive, try to understand beyond the physical appearance, beyond the observation, beyond the apparent meaning. What is God? What is transcendence? What is divinity? How we can understand it? Now, these are the capacities which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided only to the human being. And that depends upon the level of consciousness which we have. But we, most of the time, remain low, remain confined to the lower level of experience that is just at the level of sensing. We see, okay, the sun has risen. Now the sun has set. Now it is night. It is time to eat. It is time to go to bed. But we have stopped thinking, where these things, observation and perception, we don't even go near to these things. The entire civilization, Greek civilization, with all the philosophical development, with all the great scholars, Greek scholars which we study even today, that civilization perished ultimately. And it perished mainly because they failed at this level. And the Muslims picked up, they built the civilization further from this, particularly from this aspect. The Greek had the philosophy, but they did not turn it into the observation. Observation does not mean just only seeing with the eye. When we say observation, scientifically, technically, it means making an observation. Observation, how the sun looks like, how the moon looks like, what is the difference between them, how they rise. These were the questions of observation which Ibrahim alayhi salam raised. Observation. And that ultimately brought to the questions of mathematics. What is their interrelationship? Behusbanin. How they are interrelated? They are interrelated by calculation. The Greeks did not make any progress in this regard. And perception. We just have the apparent view, what we see with the naked eye. But we don't further perceive, we don't further try to understand the other dimensions which are not open to the naked eye. Universe is not just 3 dimensions of physical existence in which we are existing, but it has many other dimensions. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Fatir tells us that I create different creatures, and I keep on creating them in different dimensions. Ijnatan, in different dimensions. If we do not have the capacity to perceive, then we cannot progress further. Now, enlightened human being, the scientists, they are trying to understand beyond the third dimension, 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions. They are trying to even draw them on paper. They are trying to understand them. So observation and perception. Muslims in the beginning made a wonderful progress in this aspect. They picked up the existing ilm, which the Greek civilization or other civilizations had at that time, and under the guidance of Quran, they went further to observe the physical world with the Iman, Amantu Billah, and they started probing those corners of the universe, those corners of the human psyche, those corners of culture and civilization, history, all other subjects which were hidden from the human eye. And that perception led to further regeneration of ilm, knowledge. And if you kindly remember, we had discussed under the topic of cognition, that consciousnness, intelligence, cognition. The cognition is the feature of all living things. Every living thing has a system. That system of living things is called cognition. They have cognitive systems. In those cognitive systems, they have awareness, they can pay attention, and they can introspect, zikr. For understanding Quran, we don't need PhD. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls it zikr, that it is zikr. You can understand it by introspection. In Urdu, you said that Quran को समझने के लिए गौर की जरूरत है. You have to understand Quran. You can understand Quran through introspection by deeply thinking into it, by deeply reasoning into it. So these are also the aspects of taqwa, basically part of cognition, that you have your attention and introspection. These are also, along with awareness, the parts of cognition, features of cognition. And cognition is feature of consciousness. And we are only discussing a limited aspect of taqwa as consciousness. Awareness is closely related and synonymous to attention. This is very important. Without attention, the human being has no meaning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that don't talk to me unless you give me attention. Don't come to me unless you give attention. You are able to give attention and you are able to understand your own word, and you are attentive to understand my word. And in many places we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites attention even by calling, Ya Adam, what are you doing? We don't know whether the husband and wife, they were engaged in a discussion, in a debate, in a hard debate, in a hard discussion. They were quarreling or what, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asking, Ya Adam, O Adam, uskun, remain in peace, quiet, remain peaceful, live peacefully, you and your Zawja in this Jannat. Attention is the important aspect of cognition. If anything is not giving any attention, maybe it is dead. And if something is living, claims to be living, is not paying attention, again it is dead. So far as the awareness and thoughtfulness and other processes are concerned. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls them dead persons, like animals. who can't pay attention. I mean, even if they pay attention, they refuse to understand, they refuse to learn, they refuse to follow. Samena wa asayna. They say that we have listened, but we don't care. They defy it, they violate it. Awareness, when we are talking of awareness in human beings, and particularly when we're talking about the taqwa, we are not talking about the peripheral awareness. Taqwa requires awareness, the awareness in which the intention and attention is there, and then which is capable of introspection. Peripheral attention, peripheral awareness is not the purpose of taqwa. You are driving on the way, left and right, even in front of you. You are aware of many things, but they just pass. When you drive by, they just pass. This is peripheral awareness. We are passing through the entire ocean of ilm of Quran with a peripheral awareness. Yes, qiraat is going on. There is sawab. Yes, tilawat is going on. There is sawab. Yes, we have read this ayat just as with a peripheral attention. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking that when Quran is read, be attentive, give attention. Attention is the basic requirement, the starting requirement, the requirement of being aware. Awareness is a part of cognition, and cognition is a part of consciousness. And within consciousness, attention is a part of awareness. And all these features Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has developed during the process of evolution in the human being. These are not ordinary things, but we ignore them. We listen to Quran with peripheral attention while everything else is going on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, shut everything. Be quiet, calm, silent when Quran is being read. But we don't hardly pay any attention. Quran complains that you hardly pay any attention, although this is the starting point. Peripheral awareness is the process of information at periphery of attention. We are not attentive. What the Imam is reciting, we are not attentive. We are there at the periphery of attention. When he says Allahu Akbar, we listen it at the periphery of attention. We are thinking of something else. We are absorbed in something else. But by ritual, by the exercise which is going on with others, along with others, or even individually, we are just following a ritual with the peripheral attention. At the periphery of attention, we are not attentive. The ahadith show that the prayer, the namaz, the salah, which we perform before God, it is a meeting with God. It is very important part of ihsan, developing ihsan, that if I can't see God, He is seeing me. I'm in His presence, all the time attentive. I can't lose attention, but it's not happening. We sit in the salah at the periphery of attention. Then introspection, zikr, it retrieves from the within. From within. It examines inner thoughts. We do thousands and thousands of tasweer of zikr say all the time saying Subhanallah, Subhanallah. That is not the purpose of zikr. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says zikr Zakaria, that does not mean that say Zakaria on the tasbih. The purpose of zikr is the introspection that examines inner thoughts and feelings. In this process of zikr, if we are not examining our own internal thoughts and feelings in the most objective manner, it is not zikr. That is why we are failing. We are not doing zikr as the word from its root in the Quran at different places with different shades of meaning in different ayat portrays itself. You have to understand it, this word at every place in its perspective, in that ayat, in that surah, and in the entire context of Quran. This is basically the part of metacognition. You remember we had discussed metacognition one Saturday before. The difference between cognition and metacognition, if I can translate the cognition as idrak, wama adrak. If you can translate it as idrak, the difference between cognition and metacognition is that in cognition, we have the feelings of the environment. We understand ourselves and the environment. But in metacognition, we understand our own internal process of thought, internal thought process and feelings in the most objective way. Why I am thinking like this? Why I am thinking of sin? Why I am all the time being attracted by sin? If not all the time, why at a particular point I was attracted by it? It's internal psyche, internal reasoning, internal understanding of the thought process. That is metacognition. So this aspect, in fact, develops metacognition. Zikr, introspection, as is defined here, it develops metacognition. And metacognition ultimately connects, raises human being to the higher level of transcendence, connects with the transcendent, connects with the divine. And we had started our discussion that connectivity is part of consciousness. Consciousness as TAQWA. TAQWA of God, consciousness of God. And when our cognition, we are able to take it to the level of metacognition. Metacognition, where we understand our own thoughts and feelings. There we are able to connect with God. Otherwise, when we, for example, just an example, we have all the filthy thoughts. We don't understand them. They are dominating us. There is shuhan nafs, which is dominating. There is nafs al-ammara, dominating. Then in that state, how can we have the state of metacognition in which we can perform introspection, zikr? That explains the internal thoughts and feelings in the most objective way. Introspection brings out one's primary mental knowledge. I said at one point that we don't need PhD for understanding Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided this capacity within when Adam was upgraded. It has been provided to Adam. It is with the Bani Adam. All the information from Adam till today is available on the DNA. It's a question of introspection, understanding one's own thought process, going deeper into one's own self, psyche. Fi nafsika, not just anfus, nafs, fi anfus, fi nafsika. It is the level and it is the primary level of one's mental knowledge, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, that we can reason out. Now, here, if you recall, we had discussed in the beginning that consciousness requires intelligence. It requires general intelligence. It requires emotional intelligence. And how do they work? Man has been given the features, the capabilities of taking input. 5 senses, for example. He takes input, sama, basar, and the input which he takes, the data which he takes through the input ports, eyes and ears, for example, they are processed by fuad. Then they are shuffled by the qalb in the presentable form, in a meaningful form, in charts, for example, in graphs. And then the sadr, the center of intelligence that takes the decision. And it is at that level that the features which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continuously emphasizes in Quran, tafakkur, ta'akul, tazakkur, tadabbur, fikr, zikr, tadabbur, all these features which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has emphasized are used by the sadr on the presentation made by the qalb, on the material processed by fuad, the fuad which has taken material from the sama and basar, for example, from the 5 senses, and then the sadr takes decision with fikr, reasoning, thinking. That is why it is called the center of intelligence. So introspection brings out one's primary mental knowledge. Do we think in these terms? Do we analyze it in these terms? Do we try to understand taqwa in these terms from these angles? I leave the discussion here. Next time, Allah willing, we will continue the discussion from here. Subhan rabbika rabbil izzat amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. If there is any question after the dua, you are most welcome. I may request our brother, Professor Dr. Al-Sharab, to kindly lead the prayer.
I will, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا برحمتك شر ما قضيت. O Allah, spread your mercy upon us, shower us with your blessings, increase our knowledge, grant us your forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the Firdaus al-A'la. O Allah, purify our hearts, strengthen our faith, increase our knowledge, and make us benefit from the knowledge that you have taught us. O Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Grant them your mercy, make their graves gardens from the heaven, and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. O Allah, remedy us and all our friends and relatives who are sick, and grant them full and speedy recovery. O Allah, grant us the ability to be grateful for your favors which you have bestowed upon us and upon our parents, and that we may do righteous deeds that are pleasing to you. O Allah, guide our children, protect them, and make them righteous. O Allah, we seek from you all the good, whether we know it or don't. We seek your refuge from all the evil, whether we know it or we don't. O Allah, we ask with your every name that you have elected for yourself, that none of us leaves this gathering but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weakness have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا.